is Lois Whaley for Women Today and Yesterday. And my guest today is Triwik. She is from Indonesia, and she told me how to pronounce it by saying, think not first, second, but third week. Triwik. Thank you, Triwik, for now tell us your last name.
Thank you so much, Louise, for inviting me. This is a good opportunity. My name is Triwik Kurniasari.
And you're from what part of Indonesia?
I'm from a city called Solo. It's in central Java.
In Java.
Yeah.
And Indonesia is a really unique country in that it's composed of thousands of islands.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it consists of 17,000 of islands.
My goodness. That must be really posing a problem for communication.
Yeah, I mean, for now it's getting better because of smartphones and everything. Yeah, for traveling it's a little bit tricky because there are many remote islands.
Yes. I have a friend who went couch surfing a couple of years ago, and that meant that she went from place to place. She really went around the world, mostly in Europe, but she did visit Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
And she mentioned that it was rather an adventure to get from one place to the next by ferry frequently.
Mm-hmm.
There must be many ferries in Indonesia.
Yes, yes. And right now, especially if you want to get to smaller islands, you can take the ferry. Mm-hmm.
So it does pose a bit of a problem, but I know that your specialty is really communication, isn't it?
I'm studying in Communications and Development Studies.
Yes. I believe this is your second year in the program.
Yes, this is my second year.
How large a program is it here at Ohio University?
So basically the program is under the Center of International Studies. So it also has like some other programs like African Studies, Latin American Studies, some things like that.
American Studies and International Studies.
Yes. Yeah, it has some other programs like African Studies, International Development Studies, and Communication and Development Studies is part of it.
Communication and Development Studies.
Yes.
But it's interesting to me to know that you are in the second year of the program, right?
Yes, I am. But
there are two young ladies who are in the first year of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And I must admit I had not really been aware of the program before.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So how many students do you have in your phase in the second year?
Mm-hmm. So I have. So there are 14 of us.
14.
14 of us. Yeah. It's an interesting program because we can focus on anything that we like. It's an interdisciplinary program. Mm-hmm. So in the first semester, we have to take this core courses.
Yes.
And then after that, we kind of allowed to take whatever that we like. For instance, if we want to focus on anything, for instance, some friends, they focus on public health, and some others, they focus on public administration. And like I myself, I focus on strategic communications because I'm interested in public relations.
Public relations.
Yeah, things like
yes.
that, yeah.
I know that I had mentioned to you about the Indonesian expert, Elizabeth Collins. And I was trying to contact her to ask her about one of the students I remembered from some time ago that she spoke about when she was on this program quite some time ago. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. So Elizabeth Collins was on one of my early programs. But I hadn't realized that she had actually retired quite recently. Last fall, I guess, moved to California. So she's no longer available, unfortunately, here at Ohio U. But she had an interest in Indonesia. She was in actually philosophy and world religions was her academic area, but when I was rereading parts of her book today, first time in a while, she really sounded a lot like a political scientist or a historian, really, because of the things she was emphasizing. And actually it was on development, but it was more on what we talk about, development of natural resources and that sort of thing, as opposed to say public relations, which is your area of expertise. And can you tell us, of course you must have had quite some experience in Indonesia before you came here. What sorts of things had you done in Indonesia in the field?
So basically, I have a background in journalism. So I was a journalist for a couple of years. I was a journalist in one of the biggest English language newspapers in Indonesia. It's called the Jakarta Post. So I worked there as a journalist, and I covered some news and events in several beats, for instance, business, politics, city lifestyles, so environment, things like that. So yeah, I have a background in journalism.
Well, it's interesting that they have several, from what you say, they have several English language newspapers in Indonesia, but the Indonesian, when I was a girl, a long time ago, of course, was called the Dutch East Indies, because the Dutch were the colonial rulers there for a long time, I guess. Sure. Did you learn about the history of colonialism in your school when you were young?
Yes, we have history lesson. I learned it during my for my elementary school, and then junior high school, and then also in senior high school. Yeah, we learned a lot about the colonialism.
I believe the Dutch were kind of early on the scene in East Asia. They were among the first to have a trading port in both Japan and China, I believe. And so I guess they decided, well, that was a little much to get into, especially the Japanese, who I guess only had one trading port for several hundred years, and they said, everybody else stay out. We don't want any Europeans and Americans here in Japan. And then in the 19th century, they were, in a sense, forcibly enforced to open more readily to Americans in 1854 by Commodore Perry. And but it sounds like the Dutch were there earlier. Is that possible? I mean, before the 19th century, there were Dutch.
Oh yeah, they conquered our country like around 400 years.
For about 400 years ago.
Yeah, 400 years. So yeah, I guess for the first time it was Portuguese, and then British came for a little bit, and then French also came for a little bit, and then the Dutch came, and they
stayed.
Yeah, and then the Dutch, like the longest, they stayed for around 4 centuries, and then the Japanese also came for a while.
Right, during the Second World War.
The Second World War, yeah.
They conquered the Philippines, which was America had taken, the United States had taken that from Spain in 1898 during the Spanish-American War. And and then, of course, later on, the French had been involved in Vietnam for at least a century or so before the Vietnamese War broke out, and the Americans had sort of said to the French after World War II, well, why don't you stay? But eventually they were, the French left in 1954 from Vietnam. And the Dutch left about that time, I think, about that time, during the 1950s sometime, perhaps.
For Indonesia, they left around 1945. Like.
Oh, did they? Right
Yeah.
after the Japanese
Yes.
evacuation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a history which is sort of new to me, but because of my experience with European history, colonialism, imperialism played a very big role, and certainly the European countries just were gadding about the world in the 18th century and the 19th century, and just sort of taking over a lot of places around the world. And since the Second World War, of course, they've left. And many of those countries have become independent. There were only 49 or 50 countries that formed the United Nations in 1945, 70 years ago. But gradually, more and more former colonies have become independent. So it sounds like Indonesia was one of the very early ones, just right after the Second World War. So how about your family? I suppose they still live there in Java.
Yeah, my mom lives in Solo, in my hometown, and then I have a brother. He lives in Jakarta.
In Jakarta,
Yeah.
which that's the capital city.
Yeah, Jakarta is the capital city.
So, and the newspaper that you were affiliated with was in Jakarta also,
Yes,
right?
it is also in Jakarta. Yeah.
Right. Have you visited some of the European countries?
Yes, I started to travel to Europe in 2010.
2010?
Yeah, I like traveling a lot, so that was my first time traveling to Europe. I traveled to Europe by myself. I went to some countries, and in some cities I went to the Netherlands, I went to Belgium, France, and then Germany, and then Denmark, and also Sweden. And then I had a chance to go back there again. A year later, I got an internship in Germany, and I stayed in Germany for 2 months. Yeah, it was for journalism training in environmental reporting. So I stayed in Germany for 2 months, and I had a chance to go to Italy, and then some countries also like Spain, Austria, Czech Republic. And then a year later, I went back to Europe again, and that was the first time I went to the UK, the United Kingdom. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're quite acquainted with the former European colonial countries. People forget that Germany had a very extensive colonial empire before the First World War. And because they lost the First World War, they lost all those colonies. There was a colony in Africa, Southwest Africa, and a number of islands in the Pacific were under German control before World War I. So then they became mandate countries, and the Turks were also on the losing side, and so they lost the areas that the Turkish Ottoman Turks had ruled for a long time, such as Palestine, Syria, Iraq. All of those countries were at one time part of the Turkish Empire. But we're so far away from that now, we forget that there was such a thing as imperial Turkey, and which of course is very much in the news, Turkey very much in the news now because of the Syrian refugee crisis and so on. So, well, we spent some time, a good deal of time in Spain, where my husband is a specialist on the Spanish Civil War, which occurred just before World War II. And so we've been to Spain and also Germany. He was with the American troops in Germany, not during World War II, because he was too young for that, but he was in the Korean War, and he was sent to Germany. during that time. So he spent a year in Stuttgart, which was part of the American zone. Germany was divided up among the four great powers, the Soviet Union, the U.S., Great Britain, and France, after World War II for quite a while, 5 years or so at least. And so he was with and I went to Germany. That was my first experience, really, of Europe, was a summer in Germany in 1956. So I'm rather curious about the environmental things that you were studying in Germany during your internship there. What in particular were they interested in? Were you sending back reports to Indonesia, or were you more working for reports on Germany?
So basically, is a scholarship provided by the German government. So it's for the Institute of International Journalism in Germany under the GIZ. Is a governmental organization in development and sustainability. So I got the scholarship and I got to meet with other journalists and environmental experts around the world from Asia, Africa, and also Europe. And then we basically we learned on how to write articles in environmental issues, something like that. Because sometimes, like, there are many technical terms in environmental issues, so we kind of learned on how to provide readable articles to our readers, something like that, to understand more about environmental issues. And Germany is really good in terms of protecting the environment. And then I had a chance to go for an excursion for a week, and then we went around Germany to see how things going on, and then to see the solar panels. For instance, we went to Freiburg, which is like the greenest city in Europe.
Is it?
Yeah,
That's,
it is really nice.
I'm very interested to hear that, because we spent a later summer in Germany in 1967, and we were very close to Freiburg.
I see.
We went to Bad Krozingen, which is just on the edge of the forest there, and the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest.
Yes, the Black Forest. Yeah. We also went there, and then we went to see this hut, which was generated by solar panels, solar energy. So it was interesting. And then we went to Heidelberg, and then we went to Nuremberg also, and then we went to Frankfurt. It was an exciting experience, and on how we share about environmental issues in our home countries.
Right.
Things like that.
Of course, here in Southeast Ohio, there are many people who are interested in environmental concerns, local environmental concerns, such as fracking and fracking injection wells and solar panels and that sort of thing. And Athens is really a pioneer in the state of Ohio in its environmental businesses, small environmental businesses that have gotten larger, really, as there is more of an interest in renewable resources. And environment is one of my big interests, you might say. So I'm quite proud of the fact that our area here in Athens is a place where one can learn a lot about the environmental problems in this area, which include a lot of things such as, nearby West Virginia is the state with the most mountain tops that have been removed in order to just, they just scraped off the whole top, 100 or maybe 200 feet of overburden in order to get at a coal seam instead of the way they used to do coal mining with deep mines, with the people having to go down, into the earth and blast out the coal inside the earth, which has problems to it certainly, but is rather different from just blasting away the whole top of the mountain in order to get at that one seam of coal. And there are now, hundreds of mountaintops that have been removed in Kentucky and West Virginia especially. Luckily, we don't have that here in Ohio, but it's very prevalent. It's a very common way of doing things. Well, I think we should probably talk some about how you and I happen to meet each other. Where did we meet?
Yeah, we both committee members of the International Women's Day Festival. Is an event organized by Women's Center, but Ohio University Women's Centers.
Yes.
It will be on Sunday, March 13th.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We are meeting every Monday and talking about what's upcoming, and they have a lot of plans. In fact, just this week there was a deadline to the way the festival usually works is that many women volunteer to do songs, dances, talks, It's quite a variety of things often. Did you go to last year's International Festival?
Yes, I volunteered for last year's festivals.
So you're aware of how it
Yes.
changes.
Yeah, I do.
And it's from 2 to 6, which sounds, oh gosh, 4 hours, that's a long time. But very few people actually stay for all 4 hours. They come in and out. They see their friends perform, for instance, or they perform themselves and stay a while. So it is very much of an event that one can come into and out of, as your Sunday afternoon on March 13th happens to be going. So we do hope that many people will want to come. Of course, it's open to all people, all the public, including plenty of men, but the performers are exclusively women.
Yes.
So it's an interesting way of seeing what different people do here, women especially, what interests them and how they will bring forward a lot of variety of things. I can remember we've had hula hoop. I don't think we have any hula hoopers today or upcoming this March 13th, but some other years we've had hula hoop. And there was one woman who was an expert on sword play and, exhibited her skill in sword play, and of course many dancers and singers, which are more traditional kinds of things. Do you know anyone who's going to be on the program this year?
You mean to perform?
Performers?
Yeah, I know a couple of people they're going to perform for the event. Yeah.
Are they Indonesian or perhaps other international students?
Yeah, international students. I know some international students they're going to perform.
Well, it's called the International Women's Day Festival, and it's been going on, I believe this is the 8th year. I think this is the 8th year. It was started when Dr. Susanna Dietzel was the Women's Center director. And this year we have a nice young new person, Dr. Geneva Murray. This is her first year to be working in charge of the Women's Festival. So it's an event with a history behind it, in that I think the first one was held about over 100 years ago in Europe, someplace in Europe. International Women's Day. And since now we've expanded to March as Women's History Month, and International Women's Day itself is traditionally the 8th of March. I don't believe we've ever had it actually on the 8th of March because, well, for one thing, it used to be that there was spring break about that time, and they have changed the university calendar so that spring break is at a different time now from what it was originally. And the other thing is it's always on Sunday afternoon, so it will be the Sunday afternoon closest to Women's Day, the 13th this year. But although I think it's been as late as about the 20th, depending on what people have decided fits in best with the university calendar and the Women's Center calendar. I brought a pamphlet here which shows Women's Center calendar of events, because the Women's Center does do a lot of they have brown bag lunches on, people bring brown bag and hear someone speak. Usually that's on a Thursday lunchtime. And they have many other things that are scheduled, talks that would be of special interest to women presenters or to a woman's audience. So it's a very complete variety of things here. Right. And one of the other things that they have out there is this new magazine called Ohio Women for alumni. This is, I think, was started last year. I think that spring was maybe the first issue they had of it. It's called Ohio Women. So it specializes in women on the faculty, women students, women in the news with reference to Ohio University, and quite a variety of things here. My goodness, they even have some comics.
Yeah.
I think they have they have a fancier name now for comics, but I can't think what it is. And here are several interviews of women, and so this is another way in which women are emphasized at Ohio University. Of course, another thing, and as an international student, I know you've been involved with the International Week probably last year.
Yes.
This is, I think I've got a picture on the, that can be shown of my T-shirt. This is quite an old one. I'm not sure how long ago it came out, but it might have been as long ago as 20 years. But Ohio University, the world is our campus, with all these flags on this side. I was taking a look at the, to see if I could see Indonesia, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of rhyme or reason to how they were set up. They're not set up alphabetically, for instance. I don't think they're set up geographically either.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure how they decided to set them out. But as you can see, and these were the flags of all the different countries that have sent international students to Ohio University. And there are, like over 90 countries.
Yes. Oh, this one in Indonesia.
There it is. Oh, it's red and white.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Very simple, yeah.
Very simple, red and white. That's nice. Indonesia, up here in the top row. But there are quite a few. I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And probably there are 10 across here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yes.
7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, 200
So
countries.
that's quite a few flags.
Yes.
But International Week is going to be in April, I believe, sometime.
Yes, it will be in April from 10 to 16. So
The 10th
yeah,
to the 16th.
yeah, it's organized by International Student Union. I myself, I'm part of International Student Union or ISU. So I'm the programming director of ISU.
Oh, so you're having to set up a lot of things right
Yes,
now.
yes, we're organizing the events, and there will be many activities, many fun activities coming up. We're going to have a global scoop, for instance, and then we're going to have fashion show, talent show, and then of course we're going to have the international street fair.
Yes,
So,
the street fair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's always been a big part of
Exactly.
International Week. I've been active with AAUW, the American Association of University Women, over the years, and we no longer have a booth, but at one time we were selling cards from India, mostly, which were to raise money for AAUW fellowships. And interestingly, there are 2 young women here this year who are AAUW fellows. And they're in your same program, aren't they? But they're first year students.
Yeah.
One of them was from Malawi,
Yes.
Isabel from Malawi.
Yes.
I was hearing just on today's radio, you know, we get all these bad news from around the world, and they were talking about refugees in Malawi from nearby Mozambique in Africa, because it seems that Mozambique is on the verge of civil war, and people are fleeing to Malawi, which is actually almost surrounded by Mozambique. Just kind of the strange way the country is configured. Sort of sticks down into Mozambique. So, seems like if there isn't a problem in one place, there's a problem somewhere else.
Yes.
And then the other young woman, Dee, is from India. From India. And I believe both of them are going to perform on International Women's Day Festival.
Yes, yeah.
They're among the 40 people, 40 women who have signed up to do some kind of performance. I think Isabel is planning to sing. Didn't get it quite straight what Dee was up to, but they will be certainly March 13th among the 40 people making presentations then. I think you're signed up to do something too, aren't you?
Well, I'm going to help for the face painting, and then yeah,
face painting.
yeah, I'm hoping also to help the Women's Center, maybe to do something else during
Yes,
the
right.
events. Yeah.
Well, as committee members, they expect us to do more than our own thing.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is talk about Ohio's First Ladies. And the reason for that is actually 2016 is the 100th anniversary of the United States park system. And parks are, you know, very varied things. They aren't necessarily a place with woods and so on, what we think of as a regular park. But here in Ohio, we have a national park, which is a National First Ladies Park. The reason being that there were as many as 7 women in the 19th and 20th centuries who were wives of American presidents. Probably not too well known, actually, to people internationally because of, we're not talking about Mrs. Roosevelt, either Mrs. Roosevelt. Yes, it's always, you never can tell when all of a sudden people are overcome a bit. But I brought a book about Ohio women generally, profiles of Ohio women. And this was put out in the bicentennial year of Ohio in 2003. And it's actually published by Ohio University Press. So it's got its connections with us. And as it happens, the page that I had opened to shows one of the Ohio women, presidential women, Lucy Ware Webb Hayes, 1832 to 1889, and her husband was the president who followed President Grant in the 1870s, the late 1870s. And she's actually from not too far, she was born not too far away from here. So if anyone has ever been to Chillicothe, that was the hometown of Lucy Webb Hayes. And I'm sure that they have something there, like the birthplace of Mrs. Hayes or whatever. It's been a long time since I've been to Chillicothe, and I don't really remember, but I know it's been associated with her name all along. We have a picture of that page in Profiles of Ohio Women, 1803 to 2003. And Mrs. Hayes is on the left-hand side. And I found it interesting that the woman across from her was someone that I have known. She was very involved with the Equal Rights Amendment, which was an effort in the United States to put an amendment in the Constitution in order to assure that women had equal rights with men. But it didn't pass. It was an interesting effort. It actually started in the effort to have an equal rights amendment, started right after women's suffrage was passed in 1920. And for 50 years, it didn't even make it out of a congressional committee. Someone would bring it in, some congressman would bring it in, and the committee would say, oh, well, we're not interested in that this year. Women have enough rights, and we don't have to worry about that, and so on. It finally got out of committee in 1972. But they set a time limit on it. They said it must be ratified within 7 years or it won't go in the Constitution. So then they sent it out to all the states, and right away a lot of states passed it. But then the states that said women have enough rights and they don't need any special amendment in the Constitution, the people who were making that argument prevailed in enough states that it never got through. Ohio was like the 34th state to ratify, one of the very last. They had to have 37, and they never got to 37 states. So that was the end of the Equal Rights Amendment. But this woman, who was someone that I knew quite well in the 1970s, Mary Wynn Dwyer Heath from Dayton in Montgomery County, was a person who worked on the national level for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. She worked specifically for the Business and Professional Women's Clubs of America and also with AAUW to try to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, but nope, never did pass. So I had forgotten that Mrs. Hayes was on the same page as Mary Wynne Heath of Dayton, who passed away a couple of years ago, you know. But this is quite an interesting book.
It is.
And it does list in the back in the appendix the women who were presidential wives, and there were 7 of them. So anyway, I'm going to speak a little bit about that. On International Women's Day, I'll be one of the presenters. The presentations are all relatively short, between 5 and 15 minutes, perhaps at most. And so there's a great variety of people who will be presenting. And that's March 13th, Sunday afternoon, Baker Center Ballroom, 2 to 6. So we want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. And I'm going to be speaking to Dr. Murray one of these times, too.
Okay.
So that will be nice to hear from her. So tell us a little bit more about your family in Indonesia. You were saying your mother still lives in your hometown in Java.
Yeah, my mother used to be a teacher. She used to be a history teacher. And then, but she's already retired. And yeah, now she lives in Solo in Central Java.
Yes. And your brother lives in Jakarta, you said.
Yes, my brother is an architect, so he has a family in Jakarta.
So you have, do you have young nieces and nephews?
Yes, I have 2 nieces.
Well, that's nice to have something. What do girls like in Indonesia? Do they play, I suppose they play with dolls?
Well, yeah, just like any other girls around the world. So yeah, they like playing with dolls, and then they like to dance, they like to sing. So yeah.
Right. The things that women are interested in everywhere around the world. We're very much alike in so many ways, aren't we? Really. How much travel have you done in your home country of Indonesia, actually?
Travel, you mean?
Within Indonesia itself, have you been to other places?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been to some other places in Indonesia, but I've never been really like in each part of Indonesia because it's so huge.
Yes.
And there are many islands.
So many islands.
Exactly, and I still want to travel more, especially in the eastern part of Indonesia.
I mentioned earlier about Dr. Collins and her interest in Indonesia, and I had forgotten really, I hadn't forgotten that she was interested in the environment, but I'd kind of forgotten the specifics till I took a look recently at her book, which is actually called Indonesia Betrayed. And she speaks about development, about the negative side of development, of, you know, small landholders being displaced by large industrial agriculture, single crops, you know, the native woods being cut down and palm plantations being put in. Is that something that is a concern in Indonesia to some people?
Yes, it's been a really huge issue in Indonesia, especially the forest fires and everything, especially the forest fires in Sumatra. Forest fires, it has caused lots of problems, not only for Indonesians, but also for neighboring countries like Malaysia, Thailand, and then Singapore. And then the forest fires, they cause the smokes, the haze, and it has been very bad in the last few years. It has been a real problem for our government. It's kind of difficult to handle it, especially during the dry seasons.
Do I get the impression that some of the fires are actually, they're set in order to clear the land in
Yes.
order to plant palm
Yes, that's
trees?
true. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the government has been trying to bring these companies like running in the oil palm plantations to bring them to justice in terms of this land clearing issue, but it's been very difficult. Yeah, because many other things. It's been very difficult to bring them to justice. Yeah, but our government has been trying to do so.
I think that the palms are are they like the tall palms that we think of for dates? They're primarily for oil, aren't they?
Yes, yes, for oil.
And they don't have dates on them. They have something else.
No, yeah. It's like fruits, but it's different kind. It's not eatable, I believe so. Yeah, basically for oils, and then if you take a look, for instance, like butter, you will see that to make butter, you also use that kind of oil, and then for soap, shampoo, things like that. Yeah, they use
palm oil.
Yes,
palm oil. So it's kind of interesting. I was thinking, well, palm oil. I wonder what else I knew about the soaps and so on, shampoos, that was an important ingredient. But I was reading something else, one thing about America, they have passed, I certainly hope they don't repeal this, they passed about 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, they passed a law that ingredients had to be listed on like boxes, boxes of cake and cake mix and all sorts of things, canned goods for that matter. If it just says, often it just says beans and salt or something like that. But other things are very complicated. Often there's a very complicated list of ingredients, and sometimes palm oil shows up, as an ingredient, say on a cookie mix or something like that, and you think, palm oil? But it's quite widespread now. I think it's relatively new that it's found in so many different things. But well, is it just parts of Indonesia? I mean, for instance, in Java, do they have palm plantations there, or are they on other islands?
Mostly in Sumatra and Kalimantan.
Sumatra.
Yeah, because Java is pretty small, and there are too many people in Java, so we don't really have a plantation.
No place.
Yeah.
They want to get to a place that has a lot of sort of natural forest.
Yes.
And get rid of the natural forest in order to make a palm plantation.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting. And like I say, Elizabeth Collins was writing specifically about this problem, which some people see as a problem and others don't. It's like with our country and the people who are very much in favor of mountaintop removal because, well, it's easier, it gives them a job. People who are not in favor of it are the people who had to move because their mountaintop was knocked off, So that there are two sides to a lot of these questions about what is a good way of doing things. So I think another thing she wrote about was shrimp, that there were like shrimp farms in some places in Indonesia because, Americans, hey, go out Saturday night and have a nice shrimp dinner and all this sort of thing, and we don't even think about where the shrimp come from. But when I was a girl, it was quite famous that the North Atlantic had a lot of codfish. And it was just considered, you know, an endless resource. Well, they finally fished out all the cod. There are no more cod to speak of in the North Atlantic. So they import cod from the West Coast and from South Africa and places. I guess shrimp are like that too. So there are pluses and minuses, certainly, and it's nice for us who like shrimp. But when you get to the point of actually exhausting the natural resource, then it's pretty dangerous.
Yes.
What are some of the other environmental concerns that you've dealt with or been interested in your writing, your journalism?
Well, the most obvious thing is the pollution, definitely. Like, for instance, I've been living in Jakarta for a couple of years, and the air pollution is really bad. The air and then water pollutions. And then the thing is, people sometimes, especially like for instance, the water pollution, people tend to throw away their garbage on the river. So yeah, because they just think that the river can wash away, I mean, like, the garbage just like that, and it's like magic, just like that. So people, it's been like, I don't know, part of the culture that people tend to throw away the garbage on the river.
Right.
So it has been like it has caused like a problems. For instance, during the rainy seasons, it will cause flood, like a massive flooding, which is very bad. And because of the drainage doesn't really work, because of the garbage, the piles of garbage, and then also the air pollutions. There are so many cars, like in Jakarta itself, so many cars, and the traffic's really bad. And because we don't really have like a good public transportation, we don't really have subway or metro, things like that. We have buses and trains, but they're not really that good. So people tend to drive their cars. So it has caused a huge amount of problems. Yeah.
Well, and just a month or so ago, I know I think they were actually having some kind of international conference about air pollution. And the Chinese were there, and back home in China, in Beijing, which is the capital, they were having terrible air pollution. You couldn't see a couple of feet in front of your face because it was so bad. And partly that was because they had cars, the cars, and of course the winter season, the heating problem. So lots of smoke coming out of the chimneys and so forth too. And what with one thing and another, they just couldn't see because of the pollution problem. We've had that in this country too, but it's gotten better. And at one time it was very serious in England. When we first went to England in the 1950s, they still had, we were at Oxford, and the buildings are sort of a beautiful, I think it's limestone. Anyway, they're naturally sort of a light color. But they weren't light color at all. They were just, covered with black streaks and so on from all the pollution that had come out of especially people's houses. And also the electric production places that they were. In the meantime, they've made enough changes, put enough things on so that there's less pollution coming out, and finally it's good enough that they decided they'd clean all the buildings up, and so now they're beautiful again, beautiful light-colored stone because they've scrubbed off the pollution that had gathered for many years. And hopefully something like that will happen too. What do you see for your own future? Will you be going back? Are you planning to graduate this year?
Yes, I will be graduating this semester. And then hopefully I can find an internship here in the U.S. to stay here for a while in the U.S.
and probably back home in Indonesia.
Yes.
Have you been able to return home to visit your family?
No.
No. It's a long trip, not to
It
mention the
is.
expense.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Well, we do want to stress once again about International Women's Day Festival. So tell us again about it, please, if you would, Triwik.
Yeah, sure. So it's an annual festival, International Women's Day Festival. It will be on Sunday, March 13th, from 2 to 6 p.m. So it's for everybody. So basically, we're aiming to promote for women's enhancement through that event. There will be performances, there will be researches, women-related researches, things like that. And yeah, it's not only for OU students, it's basically for everybody.
And there will be tables where organizations will be putting out their information. There will be Girl Scout cookies for sale.
Yes.
And there will be special events for children.
Yes.
And maybe you'll be involved with the face painting,
Yeah,
right?
hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully.
And what is the face painting that you do?
Hopefully we're going to do the flag face painting.
Flag face
Yes.
painting.
So the children can choose the flags that they want, and then we're going to paint.
I remember you mentioning that the Saudi flag was particularly interesting because of the Arabic.
Yes, very true.
But your flag, Indonesia, is very nice and simple.
Yes, it is very simple.
It's white and red.
Yes, it is.
White and red. So come and do see Triwik and get someone like a little gal or maybe a little guy to come and get some flags painted on their face. That's another extra for International Women's Day Festival on March 13th from 2 to 6 in Baker Center Ballroom. And we hope that everyone will come out and join us.
Yeah.
Thank you again so much, Triwik.
Thank you so much for having me, Lois.
Very nice.